Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Flux Open Dev Meeting. If you have agenda items, please make sure that you fill them out on the agenda. It's August 25th. This is the late meeting. And the first topic on the board is review of the current GA dev focus.
Cool. So yes, let me share my screen. And sorry in advance if my dog starts whining a bit. She's a bit restless. So yeah.
We can't.
Is me or that Paolo?
I think we lost Paulo. Yeah. At least momentarily. Paulo, there he is again. Here he comes.
Different square.
Yes, back now. It just crashed the whole thing. I tried to share my screen.
We have two Paulos now.
Really? Great. All right. So let's quickly go through this. So I think the first thing is around GA, right? So yeah, don't know if everything is actually tagged. So I'll go through this one first, which is there was some issues that were stale that were actually done, previously and was not closed. So I went through and closed them today around test managed transport, the proxy for SSH. I think this was a long-running issue that recently Sunny documented, and because of that, then I closed the issue. One thing that I wanted to highlight is one additional item around this subject is support for SSH over HTTPS tunneling. We don't do that at the minute, and if we do come to support it, we probably need to find a way to also block that at control level. But what I did is just created an issue for it, and then we can handle that separately. At least the yes,
one second to clarify, the initial issue that was highly requested by a bunch of people which are working at large organizations which require proxies. So this is an edge case with the second issue, right? We solved most people problems with
exactly
SOX 5, right?
So the point is, if you're accessing GitHub or Git repository via HTTP or HTTPS, you can use a HTTP or HTTPS proxy. That works fine. If you're accessing via SSH, you need to set a SOX 5 proxy. You cannot set a HTTP proxy.
Right.
So, and this works fine as well. What doesn't work is you want to access via SSH and you only have a HTTP or HTTPS proxy. For that, you need to either tunnel or have some sort of proxy that can do that conversion for you. So what we did is just created that as a separate issue, because I don't think it's the use case for everybody anyway. But folks that need to go through a proxy, they would be able to if they have a SOX 5 proxy.
Get it.
Yeah.
Great.
We could even create some documentation, which we haven't, in terms of how, for example, have a socket sidecar that kind of deals with the whole thing for us. But I'm not sure if it makes sense for us to do that now. At least the base support is now documented and folks can use it.
Yeah. I think that's a great step forward. That the SOX 5 issue was created, like the first thing we ran into when we studied this Flux version 2. So it's great to see that we finally solved that.
Brilliant.
Not for everybody, but let's say the majority are.
I definitely agree. For the majority, it should be there. And the good thing as well is that we're implementing this exact same way for GoGit and libgit too, which means users would benefit that independently of the implementation, the Git implementation.
Cool.
Brilliant. Yeah, so recently as well, we've done some refactoring of the fuzzing test that we had. So before the tests, they were quite awkwardly placed. So we needed like a different package for them. They were importing a lot of like references that we don't actually need. So now we can actually have the tests as part of the actual test file, which just makes everything a lot easier. You can debug directly into your IDE, but you still can benefit from the OSS Fuzz project by Google. So yeah, this I think is quite a big win for us. It will make a lot easier for us to navigate all the issues we were having with Fuzz. So that is done in some of the projects. I'll be going through, the other projects we have to make sure that this is across the board and we're not using the previous approach anymore. Another thing is we added some validation for values from on the helm controller. And on the back of that, I think Stefan mentioned that we should roll out, some validation across the controller. So we created an issue for that. And the idea is to pretty much make sure that on the run up to GA, we had validation across the board for all the CRDs we created. So that is done for that point of view. Contextual, so this is pretty much documentation really to centralize how we support or what we support in terms of contextual authentication and authorization. We have this spread around in specific features around the documentation, and this should have one single place in which we can track that. And there is another issue which I have tagged somewhere. I couldn't find it now. But basically that tracks the implementation of the outstanding contextual ALF for the project. So yeah, this is mostly a documentation effort. Right, so yeah, this is pretty much updating the Terraform exec. I think there is an interesting one actually that we got recently. So basically, if you're using a push branch, if you're setting a push branch that was the exact same as your default branch on image automation controller, this would yield some, end of file errors. So this user reported it recently. We created an issue and the same user came in and fixed it, which was absolutely brilliant. So yeah, Pierre done that this week. So that is really good. I think there are a few other issues that we probably didn't tag properly since the last catch up that were done. So yeah, if anyone knows about anything else to highlight around it, on the path of GA, now would be the time.
Yeah, so we should definitely add all the issues around Git improvements. Can you go here so I don't have to share my screen? Can you open this one? Can you open it?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to share your screen. Let me share my screen again. All right, that is, yeah.
Okay, so let's scroll to the road to GA and zoom a little bit here. So this is a pull request that I opened right before this meeting. There are some new items here. Most notably is we've added the Git improvements to the GA roadmap. That means we really want to do that before the GA release. And there are a couple of topics around Git improvements. For example, we want to extract all the code from the various controllers that are dealing with Git and place it in one place in package, also add tests there, and so on. And the end goal for this refactoring around Git is, in the end, we want to use a single Git package that has both Go Git and Leave Git 2 implementations in source control, image automation control, but we also want to do it in the CLI. Why? Because we want to enable people that are using Git services which don't work with Go Git, such as Azure DevOps, to be able to use Flux, Bootstrap, and so on. What I'm not convinced we should block GA on the CLI part. That's what I want to raise now and discuss here. What I'm quite convinced is that we have to get rid of the dependency between image automation controller, which imports the whole of source control just to use its Git package. So in my mind, that's definitely a requirement. We should get rid of that dependency and use the shared package that we've been working on. But I'm not sure if it's feasible to aim towards using this Git package in the Flux CLI and make the Flux CLI compatible with Azure DevOps, or maybe just use the Git package, but only the Go Git implementation in the CLI, and move the goal of supporting Git version 2 in the Bootstrap after GA. So the question is, what should we do?
Yeah, so I personally think that doesn't feel like a massive blocker. I would be more concerned if it was the situations in which something works on the CLI but doesn't work on the cluster. But in this case, it would be the other way around. So yeah, I don't think that is a massive blocking point. So yeah, anyone disagree with that?
So anyone here has any strong opinions about having Flux Bootstrap work with Azure DevOps before GA?
That's fine. I mean, we can get it working because I did compile Golang with libgit2 for Windows and it's working fine. I tested it and everything. We can get it working, but we shouldn't delay GA because of that. We can like add it after GA also. That's fine. But it's definitely doable. Yeah.
Okay, so let's revise. Can you go? Okay, we are here, consolidating Git implementation. Here we don't mention, yes, replace existing implementation, Flux 2. So maybe, Paulo, let's remove Flux 2 from here and create a different issue where we say we strive to, once we are done with consolidating the Git implementation, we strive to use that in the Flux CLI, and what that will enable being able to bootstrap Git version 2 repos.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll do this properly later.
We can write it in the agenda as
and I'll remove that from here actually.
as an action item.
Yeah. All right. Anything else from here? I think this is done now.
No, wait. So there are other things here in the pull request. So I also added to the API consolidation. So if you go back to the yes, another addition here is end-to-end testing for Git protocols. Is something that I think we are getting closer to this. We don't have everything checked out, but I think it's super important to have it before GA to make sure that everything works with our Git test server, and also have the end-to-end testing that Sanskar is porting from source control and image automation controller to package.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Maybe we should revise this another time and see, are all these bullet points really critical for Flux GA? Can we offload something? Which of those are required? So maybe let's add this to the next meeting.
Yeah. I will already create a second item, because there are a few things here that for sure we don't really need right now. It would be great to have, but again, for example, being protocol where it would help us on the whole discussion about Azure, for example, or once the V3 protocol comes around, but that is not blocking. As long as we're testing things against Azure DevOps and we're testing against GitHub, that is fine. Things around dump server and smart server is a bit more controversial because, for example, a lot of the services, the SaaS services, are kind of blocking the dump server, the Git protocol over a dump server. For example, GitHub doesn't support that for a while because it's just too inefficient, but we should still support it. So it would be good for us to just make sure we know how we're covering that on our tests. But what I'll do is I'll create another issue. The things are most obvious, I will move them around, and then we cover that on the next meeting.
Yeah. So the end goal is for having this issue, having in this issue only the thing that we consider a must before GA, and move other things out, maybe in separate issues or another overarching issue. I have no desires about that. Okay, so let's go back to the roadmap. Okay, so I'm done.
Before that, we need to, sorry to interrupt. We also, I think I'll create an issue around adding tests using GoGet provider for GitHub and Bitbucket. So we need to add that as well into, right now we have end-to-end tests against GitLab, but that's not sufficient. We need GitHub and Bitbucket as well, and possibly DevOps and code commit as well. We need that as well. But I'm not sure if GoGet provider supports DevOps. We might need Terraform or something for that.
We already have that in the Flux 2 end-to-end testing, the Azure part. So we test there cloning over SSH, HTTPS, all things, principles, and all of that. But yes, we definitely need to revisit it. The Azure end-to-end tests are broken with some Python error that I can figure out what's going on there. But I think we already discussed this last week that we should strive for merging all the Terraform things that we have in the mtest library, TF test, or how is it called? How is it called, Sunny?
I forgot. TFM test.
It's the generic, even you can forget.
That's infra. Yeah, there we go.
TF test then.
Oh wait, this thing you mean?
Yeah. So here we basically cover everything OCI needs. And we have modules inside the Flux 2 end-to-end testing around Azure DevOps. And ideally, after we finish with the controller refactoring, we can consolidate all the Terraform things in this repo and reuse it wherever we need it. For example, in the Git package, right, where we definitely need Azure DevOps. We don't want to write a mock API of what they are doing. So that will be best. With Azure, we have no issues because we have a sponsored Azure account, so we can create those things on our own.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to the roadmap. So Git implementation. Okay, so I at the API consolidation, I've added the issue you created around open API validation.
Yeah.
And I think due to the fact that there are so many fields all over the place that refer to secrets, config maps, other Flux resources, and so on, we should definitely have for all these fields validation, because we know their properties, right? So it's having a good validation for CRDs. I think it's quite important for GA, and maybe in the future we can look at how to enhance that with the latest additions to Kubernetes CRDs, where you can write more advanced validation expressions using Cell as the language. But I will not do that. I will not add that to the GA. It's just something that will follow up once we are done with the basic validation that we have to put in place for every single field. So this is a lot of work, because someone has to go over all the fields in all the APIs, figure out, oh, what is this doing? What's a good validation for it, a max length, maybe something like that, right? And we have to discuss every field type, what's best for it. So
Yeah, 100%. And to be honest, that is one of those things that are very critical before GA, because it's defining our APIs, right? So, and once we define that validation, in theory, is a breaking change to make it more strict. So, yeah, we definitely
we cannot close it after GA. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the addition to the API consolidation. We still have the refactoring as a huge milestone for the GA roadmap. I know Sunny has been working on simplifying the way we deal with status conditions and so on. Sunny, do you want to say a few words about so there is a pull request that I just seen before this meeting in package.
Yeah, a few days ago, I made this new implementation. It is again simplification of the CS conditions based on what we do in Helm repository or CI reconsider. Now, this helps us avoid all the extra things we have in source control, like results abstraction or the condition summary, which requires some extra custom conditions. Now, this works with simple conditions, ready, installed, and reconciling, and also works with complex if you want to, but it simplifies things. We don't have all the extra things that source controller tooling requires. So I've tested this with Helm repository or CI reconciler. No change in behavior. So now I'll use this in other controllers as well and see if there is anything that it needs to include that I'm not considering. It has a huge list of test cases covering various scenarios. So I still need to think more about it and add more cases. That's it. And it's in package repository so that I can use it easily across different controllers. It's still draft because I still doubt about some cases. We need to extend some of the things it does. But I'll use it as a branch for experimenting in other controllers for now.
Mm.
And I have written all the story background about what is happening here.
Yeah, so we finally get rid of those huge defer functions when we merge all the conditions that we said. And
So there is some simplification is in that. So in source control right now, there is summarize and patch. So that whole thing is done in one place. Now here, patching is not considered here. It just does the result computation. Patching you have to do in your reconsider now. So it's reducing its responsibilities, but simplifying the rest of the things. So like intermediate patching, if you want to patch in between your reconciliations, you can do it. This has nothing to do with that if you want to.
Yeah, great. That's something that customized controller must do because it runs multiple things in a single reconciliation loop. And things can take a long time. I don't know. We do decryption, we do health checking, we do things that can take as much time as the user has set up. If it sets up, I don't know, 10 minutes for the health check because I don't know it delivers stateful set updates with Flux, then we cannot just not update anything, not say anything, and freeze the whole status for 10 minutes. So what I've been doing in customized controller is every time I'm moving from one step to another, I'm updating the ready status, I'm creating other conditions like healthy, and in the healthy it's unknown with the message I'm running the health check for these objects for 10 minutes. So people actually know, oh, now I have to wait 10 minutes, right? And stuff like that. So patching the status conditions on the fly, it's something that is not needed in source controller that much, but customized controller definitely needs it in a bunch of places.
The previous implementation, that also supported it, but that component was taking care of patching. But now this component has no opinion about patching. You do whatever you want.
So we use the patch helper, right, from runtime to set it.
Right. This provides patch helper options, so which will analyze your object and the result of the reconciliation, and then create a patch helper option so that things like setting the object generation, those are set properly when you use patch helper. Like if there is no observation of any condition, generation should not increase. So those are handled by some of the helpers in this package.
Nice. So I don't have to deal with, oh, bump the generation, does not bump.
Don't need to think about it. It'll analyze the given
object. It's
object.
in the patch that's constructed by the helper. Then I have to take the patch and feed it to the patching helper that actually stores it in etcd, right?
The option, right?
Okay, cool. So what are our next steps towards refactoring? So what's your plan about it? Can multiple people work on different controllers in parallel? Or is it still something that we need to refactor source controller and only then we can do the rest, or how you see it?
No. So I don't think source controller, we need to change anything right now. It's fine as it is. But I don't think this package, you can just give it to someone and ask them to use it in this. Refactoring means more changes to the structure of your code, and need to think about it, how to do that. Okay,
No,
I
mean, can we say, yes, we have the libraries in place for refactoring, and I don't know, each one of the core maintainers, which know very well what's happening in a particular controller, will say, hey, I'm doing customized controller. So Tochi will do notification controller and so on.
You can, but I don't think it's that simple. Like we are taking more things into consideration when we are refactoring. It's not just use this library.
So
We're also thinking about how do we test things better? How do you organize the code better so that it's maintainable in the future? Like reducing the size of reconciliation, the function, which helps us easily test things in unit tests. So a lot of things to consider.
Okay. So we need I don't know, dedicated meeting on this, right? And take each controller apart, talk about it, make a plan, right?
We need some more thinking in advance, not just thinking in a meeting.
Okay. Okay, let's move next on the roadmap.
Yeah, I think that the point, do you want to cover anything else around the roadmap, Stefan?
Yeah, there are more things.
All right,
more-
let me share my screen again and just a sec. There you go.
Okay, so API consolidation, I've talked about it, Git improvements, I talked about it, documentation improvements. So here I have cross-checked the troubleshooting guide we have now under in the doc side under cheat sheet a guide on troubleshooting, and we consolidated from FAQ from other places all the things that people have recurrently encountered, and I'm for crossing that out. Is not something that will never be done with, you know, use cases around troubleshooting. It's a thing that if I don't know 5 people ask us on Slack, then someone should, you know, create a pull request, add it to the troubleshooting guide if it's something that we are not covering. But leaving that open forever and forever is not going to solve anything, and that's why I checked the troubleshooting guide. We have one dedicated, is no longer mixed with the FAQ, but it will be an ongoing effort to improve it based on, you know, what people are asking on GitHub discussions, on Slack, on issues, and so on. So for the documentation bits, the big part which is required for GA are the guides around developing, and that's also something that Sunny and Hide know more about. I'm guessing this will come after the refactoring. Sunny, can you say something about the dev guides?
Refactoring needs to be done. Like, we are still not finalized about the patterns we will have at the end. So right now you can see we are evolving our patterns. And we will have more changes in the next few months. We have a lot of documentation. Like, I wrote a lot about all the things we do, case status, conditions, a lot of things, but not officially written anywhere in Flux docs. Right, these documentation.
Yeah, so we have that on the board already on the define and unify Flux controller standards. So the links are there, but the idea is for them to evolve as the patterns evolve, and once we kind of stabilize them really well, then make them public.
And I think the other controller has more new patterns.
One second, can you put this issue in the pull request? I did as a comment because I should link to it from the roadmap. I forgot we have a dedicated issue for this. So it's in the website.
Is it this PR, right?
The PR with the roadmap.
Or with the roadmap?
Yes, I should link that item around documentation to this particular issue, because we have an issue, there are some docs. It's not like we have nothing on it. So
Or just add
yeah,
should I add those comments, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nice.
Okay, I'm done with the roadmap item. So the documentation is basically blocked on refactoring. Once we have done that, then we can revisit the docs that we have in gists, make them better, and publish them on the website under the GitOps toolkit section, where we have other things. Another what I want to discuss here around, should we document the release process before GA or after GA? I know we have an issue around that, but this also was raised by the CNCF people for the Flux moving from incubation. So should we work on this, improve what we have in the internal docs release doc, or leave it as is?
Yeah.
I
Oh yeah, sorry, go for it.
I think we can maybe document our current release cycle so that we have something in place which can be changed once we move to GA and kind of think about moving to a more regular thing like helmets, for example. I think they release every first week of the month. So that there's something at present which documents the current situation, which can then be updated once we move to something that's more scheduler.
Yeah, one thing I would add to that is one of the concerns I had, and I think the reasons for the issue that we created was more around, how many versions are we going to support in parallel? Are we going to retrofit, security bugs, security fixes, and if so, how many versions? I think all those things ideally would be defined before we go. Before we GA. I have to find the issue. I think maybe it's so pretty much the things highlighted is to review the processes we have in place around release cadence, API backwards compatibility, and support policy for backporting security fixes. So yeah, as long as we have that defined, I think we're good.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be something that we apply to Flux. It's something that's more about what we are going to do, but have a plan before we go GA with how exactly are we doing, I don't know, backports or things like that.
Pretty much, yeah. And the reason for that is mostly because if all of a sudden we need to do like, backporting and stuff like that, at the moment is a bit of a pain to do so, especially if we need to do without releasing something that is in main. Once we have that established, we might work in different ways, maybe on a branch or something, to always have a way to release quickly and backporting stuff, if we choose to do that.
Yeah, there is also the issue with if a backport is in a controller and maybe backporting that controller fix will break the integration of that controller with another controller, so you have to change another controller again, then you have to bundle it into an existing another Flux version, which is a patch release of, it's then complicated, right? Because it's not one version, one artifact, like Helm's.
And I think you hit the nail in the head there, because especially when we talk about Flux CLI versions, we need to define what does that mean? Like, are we going to backport things on Flux CLI versions as well? If so, how? Again, like all those things, it would be good for us to define before J, because otherwise, all of a sudden, we'll have a lot of work to do without, having that established.
Yeah, I don't know how to express that on the roadmap. I would ask you all to review the roadmap update as it is now, and we can do another discussion about the release process and add that to the roadmap once we settled on something.
All right. Brilliant. Shall we go for the next point then?
Yes.
Brilliant. So, well, as always, we always have a point here. If there's anything that's GA focus and needs, priority. Add your PR here, and we will try to get back to ASAP. After that, yes, I wanted to briefly talk about the board. So we've some discussions with Max this week. I made a few changes on the board, especially around creating this new view here, which is help wanted. So these are things across all the repositories we have in which we are, looking for contributors, and they could be, good first issues, or could be things a bit more advanced. Either way, the idea is to have in one place things that, a new contributor can just come here and see things that we need help with, and literally just, query about them, or start working on them right away. So that is one thing. Another point around the views as well, which I think I just briefly mentioned there, is around having a high level issue, which again is something that Max raised. So when we go to GA or even the O view here, sometimes we have an umbrella issue being shown in parallel to the implementation of something, and also the PR, which might make things a bit confusing. So what I was thinking is actually create another issue, another view, which would only capture the really high level stuff, which then we can drill down, right? And that would probably be linked to things like here, for example, those items. So OCI artifacts, API consolidation, and so on. So we can pretty much see what we're seeing on the roadmap here directly on the board. So just wanted to kind of get some views on why anyone has any idea or feedback about that before I make the change.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, I try to link each section to an overarching issue, but for some items, the overarching issue doesn't cover everything, and everything is in Shift. We add, we remove things from the board. So I think if the board now is public and everybody can see it, I think it's better for the sections in the roadmap, instead of linking to a particular issue, to link to a view on that board.
Okay, that makes sense. I will, make those changes. I'll create a tag just for umbrella issues, and then we use that to make sure that they are signaled properly. On that point, there was another thing. Yes, as we don't currently really plan releases, I'm not really sure if it's still worth this tracking we're doing, these views which are release based. So I was pretty much thinking about ditching that altogether, both releases view and the current release, because at the minute we're not really planning, like we're gonna do all this work, for this release, which is gonna be released in this amount of time. Maybe this makes more sense after we are GA, but again, just wanted to kind of get some views on this.
I'm okay with removing them as long as we have the GA section left in there. That GA view basically covers all the repos, all the things that are under the GA milestone, right?
Yes, pretty much. So as long as we're adding the issues or the PRs into the project, it will be automatically coming here if we tag them as GA as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to do those two things. As long as we do that, they will come here, and then as soon as they're closed, instead of being, instead of going to done, they will go to since last dev meeting, so we can actually talk about them as we did earlier on.
Yeah, and after GA, we can go back to the current release and so on, because then we have a fixed cadence and we know exactly what to add there.
Cool, brilliant. So I'll make those changes for the next session. All right, I think I'm done on my points. I think the next one is Kingdom around the community repo.
Okay, just a quick announcement. I have submitted a PR to remove Allison from the maintainers. We have to remove inactive maintainers periodically, and the governance doesn't require a vote for inactive maintainers. I think that means that they would be welcome back at any time. Anyway, I've submitted another PR also to add myself as a maintainer to the community, and once that's gone through voting, we should merge both of those. And that's it.
Yeah, can you put the pull request link in the doc so people can click on it
Yes, they're both linked there.
in the chat?
Oh, thank you. So the next item is Sanskar on the list.
Yeah, this is about GoGet usage. So a while back, we had discussion about how we can enable proxies per object. So like for Git repositories or for buckets, how we can, or for mainly for Git repositories in this context, how we can have proxies per object, because right now we require users to set some kind of a customization patch so that they can set the environment variables. So right now, if we want to support per object proxies, we will need to add some kind of a field where people can provide the proxy URL in the Git repository object. That's fine. But the thing is that GoGet, the way it works, it maps protocols to clients, and that mapping is a global thing, and you cannot change it per request. So it's possible for libgit2, because libgit2 we use our own transport. So libgit2, I in fact have a working branch on my local where you can use SSH per object and HTTP per object. But for GoGet, we will need to either fork it or copy their transport subpackages into our repository and modify them. So yeah, and plus the overall maintenance has kind of died down of GoGet. So yeah, maybe we also need to review long-term uses of how we want to use GoGet.
One of the key features that we don't have parity. Do you mind reminding me?
Shallow cloning, that's the
Shallow
biggest-
cloning. Shallow cloning is the biggest thing. There's also submodule support, but I'm going to raise a PR which will add submodule support to libgit2 in a week or two. I'm just writing tests for it. Yeah.
Right, so it would be those two things, right? Okay.
So
Let's
it's
say
mainly just
for-
shallow cloning. Yeah.
Yeah, for some module support, we have a feature in our API which is called include on the Git repository items, which can mimic some modules. So you can compose the same repo with Flux using includes. So I would not say, oh, there is no way to do that, but shallow cloning is like a major performance issue for Flux source control, right? Just try to use Node.js, the Node.js repo, create two Git repositories, one with libgit2, one with GoGit, and you see what I'm talking about. Many minutes compared to couple of seconds, gigabyte of RAM compared to tens of megabytes of RAM. So yeah, the differences are huge, and the larger the repo, and not only the repo as as in files in the current head, but the longer the older the repo is, all the Git history gets really crazy big. So there are multiple ways on how this can affect us. So I'm for keeping GoGit around just because of that.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but on that point, how we maintain. I think the key question is like how we maintain it. Given the upstream is abundant, it feels like an abundant project. Are we picking that up ourselves, or are we just going to rely on an abundant project? Because, for example, if there are security issues and stuff like that, maybe we're not even aware. Like, because I don't know if they have a security team that is active. I don't know even if they have a security comms for that project specifically. But the issues and PRs that are really slow at the minute.
Yeah, someone is trying to report a security issue to GoGit since June and no success. So there are a couple of issues in GoGit around that. People are asking, hey, how can we talk to someone, fix it, then announce it, and there is no answer. So yeah. On the other hand, GoGit can cause many security issues for Flux itself, right? And we are kind of have our hands tied unless we fork it and take it on our own, which is a huge task.
Completely agree with that. Yeah.
On the other hand, if we don't make a decision now and we go with both of them at GA, it will be like 10 times harder to say, oh, we are removing GoGit and there is no Git implementation field. That will be not good.
Yes, on that point, I think I will add into the consolidation API the points. I think on the last meeting we talked about having an auto Git implementation. So we start by making sure that the basics actually work for folks and stuff. But we'll add that into the GA roadmap.
Yes, that's a great step forward, right? Yeah, I forgot about
Does
that.
that need an RFC, the auto field, the auto value thing? Because
Sorry,
it's technically an API change. Does that need an RFC, the default auto value of that? Because it's technically an API change, right? Because right now the Git implementation's default value is GoGit.
So we cannot change it because GoGit is the default and it's already in etcd. Even if we change the default in the CRD, that will not change anything. I realize that defaults in CRDs are very like a trap for us. And at some point we added a bunch of defaults. For example, in image automation controller, the defaults made upgrading from one version to another really tough. Because the field was removed, we had a default, so it was there, and so on. Now we have this issue, how we cannot, even if we change the default to another value, it will not be applied because it was already persisted in the cluster. So from now on, I'll be really careful about setting defaults in CRDs. It's way better to, in my mind, to deal with the default in code because you can change it later on because it's not persisted, right? The default is based on the version of the controller instead of it's in etcd and we cannot do anything about it.
So
That's a
if
good
you can't
point.
change the default, then I think the next best option is to just deprecate the field. Just like ignore it if someone says it.
I think we should add, besides GoGit and libgit2, a third option, which is auto. We don't change anything in the defaults or anything, right? We have that on. We can set it at Bootstrap. So especially, and when people rerun Bootstrap to upgrade, Bootstrap will patch the Git repository manifesting it and will set there auto. But for all the others, we need to publish some documentation and ask people, hey, switch to auto because at some point we'll deprecate the field. So let's implement the auto behavior And before G, we can choose to deprecate the field altogether if it proves that setting it to auto actually works for everybody. There may be all sorts of edge cases with, I'm thinking about Azure on-prem. I think they have this kind of distribution where you can install Azure on your premise. So how can we tell it's an Azure DevOps repo? Because it will not have an Azure URL to have a different domain, a different thing, right? So maybe we should invite Microsoft people to a meeting and ask them how can we detect a DevOps repo which is self-hosted.
Yeah, well, we could do that based on the proxy, on the protocol version, if we are protocol aware, sorry.
And what do we use between? We use libgit2 to detect the protocol, then we switch to GoGit, or?
Well, it depends really, right? Because you can go way lower levels. So for example, if you're talking about HTTPS, you should be able to do that with a HTTP request. If you are on SSH, in theory, at TCP level, you could get, like the banner of the server, for example. You could do, I think, talking with Fide, he mentioned that potentially we could do fingerprinting, and we could do that via that. Now, otherwise, if we're actually doing via the protocol, we need to somehow implement the protocol or see if libgit2 provides us the capability of playing with that, because GoGit doesn't support protocol v2. So, yeah.
But we need to also figure out what to do with GoGit. So for now, I feel like a safe first step is to just copy their sub packages, and then like we did with SOPs, and then we see if maybe if we are lucky, someone picks up GoGit, like someone starts maintaining it, or someone shows interest in maintaining it, and we can then contribute our changes back upstream. So I feel like that is the first safe step. Just copy their sub packages so we can introduce per object proxies for now. Like we can play around with the transports.
On that point, wouldn't it be easier for us to just have a fork of it, like that we own? Because if we need to patch things, if we can, get that fork, it should be based on our
so I was
security team,
discussing this with Hide today, and Hide raised a really good point, is that if we start maintaining a fork and if we start contributing to it regularly, then people might start switching to our fork, and that might lead us to us providing support to those users, which we definitely don't want to do, because we don't want to burden ourselves with more than what we already have, right? So like I feel like if we just maintain it as an internal package, it's a good first step. If we feel like it's getting too cumbersome, then we can always just fork it and just shift all those changes to that fork.
Or we can fork it as an internal package, like Customize did it with GoYAML. We could look into how they did that. They have some makefiles and stuff like that.
If it's a private repository, then how would public repositories access it?
No, it's basically you clone the latest into a directory, and you keep it as a sub module, basically, right? It works like that. But you place it into your internal directory, so no one else can use your fork.
Okay.
But it's a fork.
So it's like combining the both. It's a fork and it's a sub internal package.
Yeah.
That could also.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So I mean, I guess we need some consensus on this, on how to proceed with this.
I'm happy for us to go with the submodule. So just copying the bits that we need across and having a module for that.
The sub packages?
Yeah. Anyone else? Any views on that?
For what it's worth, I am agree with Paulo. I also think that's what we should do. So if nobody has any objections, I guess we could take that as consensus.
Okay.
Cool.
I think there's still an item there, but we're running out of time. So I don't know if you.
I think we can skip it. It's fine. We can just take it next session. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal.
So, well, so I think that's it. And for the day, we covered everything. Ran a bit of time, but yeah. Well, thank you very much, everybody. You guys have a nice day.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Everyone.